got the grass.
Okay, meeting will come to order at 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Councilmember Purdock.
Here.
Councilmember Overton. Here. Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Vice Mayor Slutin.
Here.
Mayor Kramer.
Here. Okay, if we could stand for the pledge, and Councilman Harris, since you're just back from vacation and all fresh, could you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, is Pastor Seven here? No? Mr. Purdock, would you say the invocation, please?
I'd be honored. Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to come here tonight and to be with these good people in the city of Clearlake. Father, we ask that you would be with us in spirit and lead us and guide us as we make crucial decisions tonight that will affect the lives of the people and the residents here in Lake County and in specifically Clearlake. We ask that you lead us and guide us, and let us have your spirit throughout this week that we can continue and do the work that needs to be done here. And we say this in your Son's holy name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, just to give a review on meeting procedures. All items on the agenda will be open for public comment before final action is taken. Citizens wishing to introduce written material into the record at the public meeting on any item are requested to provide a copy of the written material to the city clerk prior to the meeting date, so the material may be distributed to city council prior to the meeting. Speakers must restrict comments to the item as it appears on the agenda and stay within the 3-minute time limit, which will be shown up above. I have the discretion of limiting the total discussion time for an item. As a courtesy to others, please turn off your cell phones, as I have done, and any other distracting devices. Moving right along, Mr. Flora, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been, motion's been made and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes. All right, item number 1, presentation of Clearlake Code Enforcement Department.
Is that the future view?
Yeah, it's clearly 2050.
That's to the left.
It's hard to see with all the giant buildings.
Is this Rocket Man, Mr. Flora, or?
That's downtown Los Angeles.
I see.
No, I thought Jack Webb was going to start talking.
All right, so before we move forward, I'd like to take this moment to thank the mayor and council members for the hiring of Chief White. Chief White's knowledge and experience in the field of code enforcement has led to our bureau surpassing most other code enforcement units in California when it comes to technology, in-field resources, and being able to perform our job at a much more efficient level. I'm part of 2 different code enforcement officer groups online. From the responses I've received after questioning, no more than a dozen agencies have vehicles outfitted with laptops, and we are one of only 2 agencies that reported back that now have in-field printing capabilities. Making the switch from special assessments to issuing administrative fines has put us on the same path that many agencies have already taken. The idea to outsource noticing and mailing has made the Bureau more efficient and allows for more time to investigate cases. As a code enforcement supervisor and having been involved in code enforcement for over 10 years, more progress has been made in the past year than over the previous 9. As a direct result of Chief White's hiring, again, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council.
Thank you, sir.
Now to start, our new implementations over the last 6 months, case management software, tracking software that performs all of the tasks we had previously completed using Word and Excel documents, but in a much more efficient and detailed manner. It's accessible in the field and in the office. We can open and close cases any location, generate documents and notices, and view statistics wherever we're at. Laptops and printers, pretty much self-explanatory. Having access to these devices allows us to download photographs, open cases, and generate notices without having to come back to the station. Parking and administrative citations. Instead of only being able to make property owners responsible, we now have the option to make tenants and vehicle owners responsible as well. New and updated Clearlake municipal codes, adding ordinances such as the vacant commercial building ordinance, and updating ordinances such as the abandoned and inoperative vehicle ordinance has provided us new and more specific tools to add to our belts. Mid-year stats, this is an example from our new software of how every day this comes up first and it tracks our stats. So daily we can see what's going on, how many cases are open, how many cases are closed, things like that. Every officer has access to this. Currently, as of this year, from up until June 30th, we've opened 1,071 new cases. We've closed 580 cases. 123 vehicles were abated. 10 properties were demolished. And 512 new vegetation cases were opened. And they've been closed at a 76% compliance rate, which is pretty good. How does this compare to last year? As you can see by the graph, the code enforcement caseload has increased significantly in 4 out of the 5 statistical categories. There are 2 main factors that play into this large increase. During this time frame last year, we were making the switch from being under the supervision of the city manager to now under the supervision of the police chief. In addition, the switch to the software tracking system has increased productivity while keeping with the same quality. As for the decrease in abated vehicles, this is the direct result of the AVA funding at the county level. On the positive note, the AVA program has been reinstated, and we are starting to see revenue from this fund trickle in. It would be a good estimate that by this time next year, we will be back at full AVA funding levels. Challenges we have. The first one, deceased property owners. This will always be a factor. The fact is, we all pass away, and sometimes we don't make plans for our properties or possessions before doing so. Tax default properties. This is a massive problem throughout the city. There are well over 1,000 properties, improved and unimproved, some of which have sat for over 10 years with unpaid taxes. These properties, which become squatted in, become nuisance and fire hazards, harbor crime and drug activity, and add blight to the surrounding neighborhoods, are the responsibility of the county tax collector to sell and recoup all of or part of the outstanding taxes associated with the property. This is not being done on a regular or annual basis. Unimproved accessible areas such as the avenues between 2nd and 13th Avenue and the area near Pomo School, which is commonly referred to as the Gobi Desert. These are made up of mostly paper streets and wooded or covered in brush and weeds, vacant residential parcels. Because of a lack of access and no real property value, these properties go unkempt, unmaintained, and taxes unpaid. This has resulted in an increase of illegal dumping, illegal camping, homeless occupancy, fire, and crime. Property demographics. What I mean by this is approximately 50 to 60 years ago, our community was a resort destination made up of primarily resort and family cabins. Over time, these cabins, along with trailers and mobile homes, have been converted numerous times without permits or documentation and are now everyday homes for families. These types of properties were not constructed for everyday living or the amenities families require nowadays. For instance, aluminum electrical wiring was fine if you had a radio or a lamp plugged in. Add to that an Xbox, space heater, and microwave, and you now have a serious electrical and fire hazard. These types of dwellings can pose a huge risk of harm to their surrounding communities. Lastly, funding for abatements. Although the budget has increased in abatement funding, unfortunately is a mere drop in the bucket. Realistically, because some of these other challenges result in a property requiring abatement, it could cost several $100,000 to complete all of the abatements we'd like to perform. How do we overcome those challenges? Encourage the Lake County tax collector to hold regular default tax sales. Develop and implement ways to secure and monitor unimproved accessible areas. Staff is in the beginning stages of this project. Discussions have included fencing areas of the use of high-resolution game cameras. Continue strict enforcement of the law. Work with those willing to reach voluntary compliance while continuing to issue administrative citations and fines to those not taking responsibility for their lack of actions and property conditions. I'm currently in the process of reviewing our current property maintenance code, as well as similar code sections from jurisdictions in Northern and Central California. I'll be bringing forward some recommended changes and additions to our current code, as well as possible new ordinances to consider, such as occupancy requirements for commercial properties and generator restrictions, among others. Lastly, continue to increase funding for abatements, as well as apply for abatement grants. Goals for the rest of this calendar year. Increased AVA funding will result in more vehicles being towed under the AVA program. Begin performing property abatements on a monthly basis. Again, I'll be bringing forward to council recommended changes to current ordinances, as well as recommending a couple new ordinances. And to present a plan to the chief and city manager pertaining to reducing illegal dumping, illegal camping, fire hazards, and crime in unimproved accessible areas. And that concludes my mid-year review. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Clements. Are there any questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for comment. Mr. Purdock.
Just read in the news this morning that, or actually I guess it was this week, that there is a movement within the county tax collector's office at the board level for supervisors in districts 2 and 1, I guess are looking at asking for resignation of the tax collector. My concern is that she's working with a 50% staff, and I thought that Supervisor Brown's comment was very much on point. When the sheriff's office reported a significant downsizing in personnel, they allowed additional funding, and as a city, is it possible that we might support the tax collector and looking for additional monies and funding to hire the staff she needs? With a 50% cut, these properties absolutely should be going up for auction, but the process that is required is relatively lengthy, and I just feel that as the city of Clearlake, and perhaps we just need consensus to support the hiring of additional staff so that could be done. We're the ones that are paying the price with a lot of these abandoned, neglected, and as you pointed out, officer, properties that have gone 10 years without the taxes being paid, and that's a huge blight on our city. So to me, let's invest in personnel so these processes can take place and these properties could be sold to owners that would keep up their property. I think that's a smarter way to go than ask for a resignation. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I would just share with the council, not responding directly to that point, but have been in contact with their office and collected some information this week so that we can map all of the tax defaulted properties that are in the city. Because I think a couple of the areas that Lee mentioned we need to focus on and see what options are available to the city and encourage the county to work with us on that, because there are thousands of properties within the city that are in tax default. They have to be in default for 5 years before they can be put up for sale. But literally, we're talking over $5 million of property tax and associated direct charges associated with those properties. So, it's a big issue for the city moving forward. It should be a big issue that the county would want to resolve, because that is potentially general fund discretionary revenue that they could use to help support offices like the tax collector. So certainly something that's on our radar. I think it plays in a lot to the weed abatement, fire hazard issues we have, some of the homeless issues, and so I just, wanted the council to know that staff's looking at what options are available and hopefully have some solutions to bring back.
And I just, and to be transparent, I don't know all the details. I only know what I read, but that just seemed like a reasonable understanding. If you're down 50% of your staff, it's hard to get that work done. Thank you.
Yeah, like you say, I don't think we know all the circumstances involved with their office. But there's definitely a problem, and we're paying the price of that problem. So again, thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments from council?
Just a quick comment based on Mr. Purdock's things. I think we really should encourage the county the county to resolve this issue. It seems to be in their best interest to get this, to spend some money to get $5 million back. I mean, seems pretty clear to me.
Yeah. Again, thank you. Moving on, public comment. We have one request here from Philip Wilson. Mr. Wilson, could you step forward?
I'd like to say good evening to the council. And my name is Philip Wilson. Lived in this city 25 plus years. And when there's an issue that I think needs to be looked at, I will come forward and say something. Well, about a week and a half ago, I was walking on a Sunday afternoon from my house down Old 53 to the store and back. On my way back, I noticed on Old 53, Venezuela's tire outfit has a commercial building there, and there's a bunch of used tires or tires to be thrown away stacked up against the fence, which is adjacent to my property and other properties. If those tires catch on fire, there's no way you're going to be able to put them out. And so what I did was I drove around later and looked at the other tire places in Clearlake, and most of them have them where they're not up against the building, like B&G, for example, has them out in the open, used tires, so they're not against any building. So if they catch on fire, all they're going to do is burn up the tires, not the buildings or anything around. And so I came down and put in a complaint, and as of, it was more than a week ago, I came in yesterday to find out what was done, and code enforcement told me they hadn't had a chance to get out and look at it. But it is an issue that somebody should be looking at, because it can burn down technically our street and maybe beyond. So that's all I have to say pretty much. Hopefully something will be done. It was supposed to go out today, code enforcement, but I don't know. So I'll get back next week and talk to code enforcement again to see what's going on, because it is an issue. This issue can hurt the whole city, So thank you for your time, and hopefully something will be done.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We cannot comment on that, but perhaps you could meet with Officer Clements after our break, if you'd like. Are there any other public comments? Okay. I keep looking at you, Patty, but seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And Mr. Flora, any changes to the consent agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any council members would like to pull anything?
No, I'm not
Or
gonna
change
pull it right
any-
now,
or
but
change
I'll
anything?
make a comment on it on one of the items later.
Well, now's the time.
Okay, I want to pull then item
Number which?
number 4.
4. Adoption of Resolution 2019-35, approving the temporary street closure.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll pull that item and then address it after the consent agenda has gone through.
I move that we approve the consent items.
Public needs to.
Yes. Are there any comments from the public? Are there any things that anyone in the public would like to pull or comment on? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back for action.
I move that we approve the consent item minus item number 4.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes.
I would like to go back to item number 4. I think this
I
is
was
another,
just going to say, let's go back.
another item that I want to highlight because it's the soapbox derby, a first-time event in the city of Clearlake that I support tremendously, and another item that we should celebrate that we're able to do this. And thank you for our city staff to help this, make this possible. Thank you.
I was wondering where you're going with that.
Yeah, we still have plenty of room for registrants out there, so if you haven't registered, take the opportunity. I would like for the city council to know that your city manager was the first person to register, by the way.
Yes, we all know that.
Is there a weight limitation, or can I join
Yeah.
too?
There is, but I'm sure you can join.
Any public comments on item number 4? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council.
Move that we approve item number 4 of the consent calendar.
Motion's been made to approve it by Vice Mayor Slotin and seconded by Council Member Overton. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, we're moving right along here. Okay, on to business items. Item number 8. Mr. Flora,
Mr. Lambert will present the staff
Mr.
report.
Lambert, okay.
So the purpose of this hearing is to consider the contract with HD Excavating in the amount of $45,000 for the abatement of real properties located at 16216 34th Avenue, 14170 Canocti Street, 16052 19th Avenue, and 31916 6th Street. The City of Clearlake was successful in obtaining a grant from Calvary Cycle for illegal disposal site abatements. The grant award amount was $214,000. After abating 14 properties, there's $41,221.97 left. The Code Enforcement Bureau identified the additional properties warranting abatement via the grant and used the RFP, and it served an RFP for the abatement following proper notice to the prospective property owners. Cherno Excavating and HD Excavating attended the mandatory pre-bid meeting and walkthrough. HD Excavating submitted a bid prior to the advertised deadline and was the sole bidder. Again, the total bid amount is $45,000, which means it will have a negative impact of approximately $4,000 in the city's budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lambert. Are there any public comments?
Cheryl Lehman, City of Clearlake. I'm just trying to get clarification. You said these were illegal sites. I'm assuming they're dump sites, or are they actually physical structures? So I'm just trying.
There's structures on 3 of them.
Okay, and those are being abated at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, I'll bring it back to council.
If I could just add one quick comment, Mr. Mayor. So once all these funds are spent down, it will free us up to apply for an additional round of Calvary Cycle money for additional abatement. So we intend to do that as soon as we can.
In the meantime, though, we do have to put up the difference, the 4,000.
Yes.
Okay.
We do have funding budgeted for abatement to cover miscellaneous costs, so we'll just use that.
We do have it covered. Okay, that was probably my only question, and apparently yours. Any other questions from council? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with HD Excavating for the abatement of real properties located at 16216 34th Avenue, 14170 Knocktie Street, 16052 19th Avenue, and 3191 6th Street.
Second.
For not to exceed an amount of $45,000.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. This doesn't need a roll call, does it, Madam Clerk? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's just appropriate to make a couple of quick comments related to the earlier presentation in this, and I just think that I'm sure you all agree that the job that the Code Enforcement Division is doing under Chief White's leadership is phenomenal. There's a big task ahead of them, but they're doing a lot with few resources, and we're trying to get pretty creative in what we can do with the funding that is available, and I just, want to thank all of you for the excellent job that you're doing.
Second.
Yeah, I think the entire council will owe you and Officer Lambert and Chief and your staff, the rest of your staff, a big thanks for what you're doing on this and many other things. Okay, we'll move on then to item number 9. And I'm assuming, Chief White, that you'll present that? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you out of the loop.
All right, good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. I get the opportunity to bring before you a project that I know has been long discussed within the city. It was a priority project when I was hired, and now about a year later of being here, I am pleased to report to you where we're at and to seek your discussion and direction regarding our intended plans. So as you all know, the animal shelter operates out of the Public Works Yard. It's out of the converted airport hangar, and I use that term loosely of converted because it consists of some kennels bolted to the ground and some other work that provided a basic area for the animals to be at. We also utilize an old, I'm not even sure what the building used to be, but some sort of a hut building out there that holds a laundry room and what we call an office, but it's actually the cat kennel and some sort of a quarantine area, and up until recently was used for deceased animals as well. Clearly, the facility was not built for the current use, and we lack adequate space to hold the volume of animals that are taken in. Our indoor areas are often doubled up from their intended capacity, so we have 8 kennels. We have to double them up so that we can get 16 inside. We also have no space for our new contract vet to be able to do full exams, and we have a lack of space for proper quarantine. So with kind of all these different issues, it was evident that we needed to get some sort of new space. Over the past year, and it's actually, there was a lot of work done before then, but really over the past year, we started working with the ad hoc committee to kind of narrow down the options and find something that was financially feasible, as well as something that was financially sustainable over the future. And I do want to acknowledge we have present in the back quite a few members who've been involved in this process, including the Animal Coalition, who've been a strong voice for the animals and really the community and the needs of the community. So I appreciate their involvement with the process. So some of the options that we looked at was relocating to different sites. We looked at the Augulin Canyon site. We looked at the building next door to this City Hall building. We looked at the options of renovating facilities as well as erecting brand new buildings. So what the ad hoc committee and staff has reached consensus on is what we're going to talk about now. What this project would involve is to acquire and install 2 modular kennel buildings at the existing site, a modular office, and then conduct site improvements that are out there. These site improvements would include secure fencing and pathways, a landscaped central area for visiting with animals, concrete walkways, and ADA parking. The modular kennels, which I'll show you a picture of kind of a representative. The plans we're looking at are different than this one, but this gives you a sense of it. They're built much like modular homes, except they're purpose-built for kennels. There was one manufacturer that we found that does this, and they've done an install with another police department back east. The nice part about these buildings is they come in on, you can see kind of at the bottom, they're basically on these wooden skids. and they come into place. You hook up all the utilities, and then they're ready to roll. They have built-in HVAC system. The structures that are there would have a combined capacity of 18 kennel boxes and 18 runs, storage room, cat room, exam room, and a lobby area. There would be 2 of these structures, which I'll show you the site plan. So this is looking at the top of the corporation yard. And basically the kennels would be located next to each other, and then there would be the office. The site plan includes proper fencing. So right now there's just a door that opens up that you can walk into where the animals are at. It's not a secure facility in the sense that people are segregated to the certain areas they need to be at. So this proposed plan would address that by providing secure corridors for our staff to move around animals as they go to different outdoor areas, exercise, temperament testing, et cetera, while also allowing the public to come into the facility, visit with animals, and not interfere with those other operations. The site plans, as I mentioned, would provide ADA access. It would also just overall improve the ability for people to come out there and make it an actual purpose-built site for really a nominal cost for what we're going to do there. There are some things that would have to happen out there to make this happen. We have to relocate some buildings, or not buildings, but there's a large Connex box and then the temporary Public Works office. So we just relocate those to a different spot within the existing yard until they move to their final location. We've been working with the city engineer's office who helped us with this site plan, and also too, they've conducted what's called an engineer's estimate for the project. They've estimated that the project with contingencies is approximately $376,000. This would include all the relocation, demolition, and installation of the site, as you see presented up here on the screen. The interiors of the kennel, just to get a perspective, you can tell it's obviously purpose-built, so it has the floors in there that can easily wash out. There's a drainage system inside of it, and then obviously the hookups for the washer, dryer, et cetera. And they're all pretty well contained and pretty energy efficient because it's not, right now we're trying to cool or heat an entire airport hangar with zero insulation and big holes in it. So this would work much, much better. As far as funding, I mentioned $376,000. There was a tentative allocation of approximately $200,000 in Series A bond funds. We've been working with the USDA with regards to their rural grant program, and we have Andy Lucas that's here from the Community Development Group who can answer more specific questions. He's been our liaison with USDA. I would point out there were some discussions going on about some other things within the county about funding potentially being jeopardized. We have word from the state director of USDA that they are very supportive of our project and look forward to a full submission if that's what council decides to do. So with that program, we'd be eligible for up to $132,000 in USDA grant funds, which would leave a balance of $45,000 that we would need to find through other funds. I would point out that if you, when looking at the engineer's estimate, this obviously includes contingencies. Our prime contingency is approximately $30,000, so we would try to stay within the budget, and so that number of $45K could pretty dramatically drop. But we also don't want to underestimate the project, so there may be unforeseen things that happen. The nice thing, though, is when you look at the facilities and everything else, they're modular built, so the price pretty much stays the same unless we have to do some sort of a change order. So at this time, we have a lot of different resources that are here. As I mentioned, we have members of the ad hoc group. We have the Animal Coalition members. We have Lieutenant Hobbs, who's in charge of the Support Services Division that oversees animal care and control. And we also have the representative from Community Development that could answer questions regarding the USDA grant. So at this time, we'd request that you discuss the project, seek public input, and provide us direction on our proposed plan.
Thank you, Chief White.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed one thing. We brought some textile samples. If you wanted to make a decision regarding the grass out there, we have 3 different options. So you could leave today actually feeling a piece of the future animal shelter. I'll pass those out.
I think you had 5 of those, didn't you? Or oh, you're down to 3.
Yes. So you could choose any one of those options and you could be within the engineer's estimate.
Thank you again. I'll accept any public comment or questions, input. I've held them this afternoon, actually.
Just for the turf question, I don't have it broken down to the square foot, but it's $5,785 is engineer's estimate for the material. And then there's an installation charge of approximately $20,000.
Okay, thank you.
Council, I do have a question. My name's Linda Pallas. In this kennel situation, you are having a setup of 18 kennels total.
Yes.
We are currently at 8 kennels,
Correct.
and you believe that 18 kennels will be sufficient for our animal control?
Well, we would still have the existing kennels at the site to include the kennels inside as well as the kennels that are outside.
Okay, so you're going to leave the kennels that are currently there.
Yes.
So this is going to be an addition.
Yes. Yeah, this would be, in a big picture, this would be a phase 1. And then eventually we could look, if Public Works relocates and everything else, we could reassess the need, but there's no need to get rid of what's already there.
Exactly. Except it's kind of garbage, but
I don't think,
They're
the inside
making it-
ones are not, they're still usable life within them, but we would obviously focus on using these other kennels at the site. Yeah, of course.
correct. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the public? I'm sorry, step up to the mic and introduce yourself, please.
Greg Stanley. I'm not a resident of Clearlake, but I'm a resident of Lake County. I'm wondering if this includes some backup generation for the fire season?
So we have had a discussion with USDA about that, and our intentions would be to look at funding for that in the next funding cycle. There's simply not enough to do at this funding cycle.
Okay, and are we going to get back on track with monthly ad hoc meetings, or?
Was we discussed at the last ad hoc that we were going to bring it to council, and then depending upon the direction of council would determine what we're going to do next.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, bring it back to council. Councilmember Overton.
Okay, so, and believe me, I want animal control, and I'd like to see this here. I'm going to assume that the buildings, of course, are movable. Seems like an awful lot of money for a situation that we know is going to be moved in, we hopefully in the near future. So, I mean, we're spending a lot of money for something that is not going to be there. So, I mean, I know the building can be moved because it's modular, but putting in this expense on grass, $25,000, just seems like a lot for something that we know is not going to stay there more than what, I hope, no more than 5 years. You know, I mean, I'm hoping that within the next 5 years, that property is going to be sold and we're going to have a shopping center or something going in there. So we already know that's going to be moved. Is there a reason why that Ogden Canyon Road is not going to work?
Well, two things. First of all, at this point, I wouldn't assume that it's going to have to be moved. You know, it is part of that larger property that's available. I have had conversations with Mr. Hughes. You know, it remains to be determined how significant the demand is going to be for all of that property. He didn't seem to be particularly concerned about the potential of this site remaining there, even if there was a retail development. So that's one piece. But the other thing is, you know, we have infrastructure at this site, and so if we're to develop something at Ogulin, we're probably going to at least double the cost of the project.
So, okay. So like I said, the buildings are fine because we know they're modular. I have a problem with spending $25,000 on grass that we know is not going to. Is there a reason why we just can't have either just regular grass or just an area that has wood chips or something in it? Is there a reason why we're looking at such a high expense on this grass? Because that's a pretty expensive piece here.
So we looked at doing real grass there, but with the animals being on it and everything else, it didn't seem that it was going to be a sustainable option. This grass includes a sprinkler system to be able to irrigate it off. So if animals go to the bathroom, et cetera, that we can clean it. In terms of the site, I mean, obviously, you know, I think the discussion and direction could be that if council is so inclined, we could certainly scale back portions of the project. The question is just, do we keep, putting duct tape and baling wire onto a problem, or do we make some sort of a meaningful step forward? One of our challenges with Ogulin is the question actually was posed here is, what about the other kennels there in the space? The reality is if we did go to Ogulin, aside from the expenses the city manager talked about, we would need additional buildings and facilities out there, which would again raise the cost. I mean, certainly within the ad hoc group, there was a lot of discussion about, if the site ended up moving. I did note that one of the things I looked at was the prior, I'm not sure what they call it, but they were the site plans for that when the last commercial shopping center was out there, and they did not include the public works facility in there. They worked all around it. I have talked to the city engineer about how things would work with regards to the roadway there, because we know there would be improvements to the roadway, and it's my understanding that this would not negatively impact that. But again, we're happy to take whatever direction the council offers, and we can go back to drawing boards.
Well, I mean, I do know that when all that was being negotiated, because I've been here, that definitely the Public Works was not something anybody wanted by our shopping center, and I don't think any of us do want Public Works by, a shopping center that's not, doesn't look good. We'd have to redo those whole buildings no matter what, so we know that's not going to be. I just have a problem spending $25,000 on grass. I mean, that just to me is not a feasible thing that. I just can't even picture it. No offense, I just can't picture it, so.
So the other thing I wanted to address in that is that there was discussion at the ad hoc about suitability for locations, and there was discussions about that an animal control site couldn't be at certain locations, and that was brought up. However, if you go right over to our friends in the city of Napa, their animal control shelter is located towards South Napa, and there's an entire shopping center that's built up around it. One of the discussions that we had when we came up with the site plan here was trying to make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible. The one piece that wouldn't be part of this phase, but obviously if a development went in, would be to put in a cinder block type wall or something between this site and the other. The other part that we looked at is that assuming that Public Works relocates, this site has plenty of expansion built in to where we could continue to build on, and obviously the hangar building, it shouldn't be there forever. We had looked to expand to these purpose-built buildings as well as larger areas for animals to be out, exercise, et cetera. And in looking at other cities that have these kinds of challenges with location and stuff, with the new engineering, and I mean, you saw the picture of it, the way these things are built now, they are compatible with areas where you have shopping, et cetera. It's not something that's an eyesore, that's in there.
I think one of the problems is that's not the city property, so eventually we knew we were going to have to move it when redevelopment went under, because that was redevelopment property, not city. So how would that work?
Well,
if we were to able to keep it, how would that work with the redevelopment agency?
So this particular piece of property, the airport property, is a little bit unique. It actually is city property. It's not RDA property, but there was a contingency in the long-range property development plan that said, because the intention of transferring it to the city was that it would remain for public use, for city use now. But it envisioned the potential of sale to a developer, and it says that if the city intends to sell it for retail or other type of development, then it has to be approved by the oversight board. So, for example, if the city was to retain this particular parcel, it's already in city ownership. But for the rest of it, for us to sell it, we have to go through the oversight board to approve that transaction.
So we could actually keep this, build this in, and build the wall around, and okay, well then I was misunderstanding.
And I did want to clarify too that it wouldn't be our recommendation, at least at this time, to retain the use of that property for the public works yard, only potentially for the animal shelter. The public works yard needs to move, and I understand that would be certainly a conflict with any retail development.
Okay, so I was misunderstanding on the use of the property. All right, still the 25,000 on the grass I have a problem with.
Councilmember Harris.
Well, I am very excited to see this progress being made. This is one of the areas of contention I had from the beginning. Before I even ran for council, this was a big concern of mine, that it's been brought up so many times about relocation, relocation, and that's why we keep pushing it off, but that may have no end, So taking action to benefit the animals that we have in our care, I think, is imperative at this point. So this is really, really, in my opinion, looking at the numbers repeatedly now, this is extraordinarily affordable for the effectiveness that we're seeing here. And I'm going to go on record in saying that I'm going to pick the mid-nap grass. And it may seem expensive. Artificial turf is not cheap. There's no doubt about it. But if you're looking at a longevity, especially when it comes to animals, you almost have to stick to an artificial turf. It just won't hold up. But no, I'm very excited to see this come to fruition because I think it's way, way overdue. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Slotin.
I'm also excited about this project. I think it's long overdue. We finally have personnel working at the kennels, and I had a question about the existing kennels, but they're going to stay. I'm excited about it, and I approve this. The one thing I do want to comment on, there are certain types of astroturf, I guess I'll call it, that are specifically made for dog areas, so that it's more porous or whatever it is. So I assume that will be.
The city engineer is nodding yes.
Correct.
And in my opinion, this thing is going to stay there a lot longer than 5 years, and I don't think we ever move it to Glen Canyon.
Councilmember Burdock.
Well, as one of us that was, along with Councilmember Overton, on the council when we voted for this, we had a very nice plan that I really felt was going to happen at Glen Canyon. But I mirror what the other council members have said. I do support this. I feel terrible that we did build out the shelter that's in existence now as a temporary shelter. It was only supposed to be there for a year as we began the Augulin project, and then one delay after another, and with fires and all the other issues that got in the way and caused our significant roadblocks. But while I agree with Councilmember Overton, I'm concerned about some of the cost. We just can't put this off any longer, and I support this and ask that the chief be allowed to build this out.
Okay, thank you all. I'm going to make that unanimous. I'm very much for it, very excited to see it go forward. I think the grass will last just fine. I agree. I think it'll last a lot longer than 5 years, but I think this is just going to be a great project, and we've all been out at the current shelter, and it's not a kennel, it's a pigsty. So I don't know what, we're just providing you direction now. I think the unanimous direction is to go forward.
So do you want to talk about procedurally?
Well, I wanted, if you could go back to the funding slide really quick. I just wanted to make sure the council was aware, because internally we made a decision on this recommendation, but there is an additional option that I think we should just share with you related to the USDA program. So they will fund through a grant up to 35% of the project cost for equipment. Okay, so that's the 132 approximately thousand you see there. We would also be eligible for a loan program for the additional amount, but with it being close enough, we think that if we do things correctly, we may be able to eliminate needing to use most of the contingency, and it's really not worth trying to go through the additional red tape and do a long-term loan for that additional cost. But that is something that is available, and I thought that we should.
That's for the 45,000 you're talking about?
Yeah, for the 45,000. Yeah. So our recommendation is to move forward with just the grant and identify other available funding for any overruns.
Okay. Last chance.
I withdraw. I'll talk with Chief offline.
I just wanted to mention, just procedurally, at this point, these numbers are engineers' estimates. We would anticipate going out to bid for all the site improvements and everything else. We believe at this time that the kennels would likely be sole source because of their unique nature, but that could also impact, this is one turf company's price and along with the others. So, as always, it could come in higher or lower. We'll hope that it's the lower side of things.
Can't hold Mr. Schwartz accountable? We understand that, Chief, and thank you very much for that presentation. I think you have your answer. Thanks. So let's move on to item number 10. And thank you, folks, for coming. By the way, I hope you stay and hear that we always like to see people in the audience, whether it's about our kennel system or other matters that you'd like to hear. But it's great to have an audience. Thank you. Item 10. Come on up to. You need to come up here. I'm deaf.
Hi, my name is Rita Lawford. I'm a member of Animal Coalition, and we'd like to donate $10,000 towards this project from Animal Coalition because we think you're wonderful. Yes, and this is our board members right back there. Okay. Have an event going on Halloween, so you guys all better show up, okay? And I'm going to tell you something. That grass is no big thing. Let me tell you something. Those animals have been waiting a long time to have a nice place. So $25,000 is nothing, okay? Have a good day, you guys.
Thank you.
You've lost control of this
I
meeting.
have lost control completely. But for $10,000, we'll live with that. Okay. Again, moving on to agenda item number 10. Consideration of extending a moratorium on the establishment of tobacco retailing businesses, smoke shops, or hookah or vapor lounges within the city of Clearlake. I'm going to look at you, but I think it's
You're correct. Ms. Swanson will handle this item.
Ms. Swanson.
Honorable Mayor and council members, at the council meeting of August 15th, 2018, the City Council adopted Ordinance 210, 2018, which was an urgency ordinance that placed a moratorium on the establishment of tobacco retailing businesses, smoke shops, or hookah or vapor lounges within the city. The council determined that such action was necessary to protect the public safety, health, and welfare of the community. Then again, on September 27th of 2018, the council approved extending that moratorium for an additional 10 months and 15 days. So at the July 25th council meeting, the council gave staff direction to develop regulations for a future tobacco retail license ordinance. So extension of the moratorium allows additional time for staff to research and determine specific regulations to bring forward to the council to consider tobacco retailing businesses. So additionally, the government code section states that 10 days prior to the expiration of any interim ordinance or extension, the legislative body issues a written report describing the measures to alleviate the condition which led to the adoption of the ordinance in the first place. So a copy of the report is attached to the staff report that was released on July 30th. So what we're asking the council to do is extend again the moratorium of tobacco retailing businesses, smoke shops, or hookah or vapor lounges within the city of Clearlake for an additional year to allow staff to bring forward a recommendation on a final ordinance to develop. And an urgency ordinance such as this requires a 4/5 vote to pass. So I can answer questions that you may have.
Thank you. Entertain questions from the public or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Questions, council?
Yeah,
Mayor Slotin,
I think
Vice Mayor Slotin.
you had some conversations at the last meeting, which I unfortunately was not able to attend. How many existing retail establishments are there that currently sell tobacco products?
There are at least 18, according to the health department. They have a specialized task force that not regulates them, but tracks them.
Is there any, what's a normal, are we above or below normal with that?
I don't know the answer to that question.
City Manager Flora, I think you have some comment.
But we had some information that certainly leads us to believe that our ratio is higher than normal. Yeah.
I think our numbers are, 1 in 8 or 900?
There are other cities that have put forward tobacco retail licensing and have limited the amount of licenses allowed. Normally, we've seen about 1 per 2,500, and we are at about 1 per 900.
So there's 2.5 times as many.
And that's based on others that have regulations, TRLs. So as to ones that don't have TRLs, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I think it's in order to do this, in order to accomplish one of our strategic goals, a healthier city.
Councilmember Purdock.
Well, I too, I support this extension of the moratorium. Ironically, I find that number at nearly a little over 2.5%, which is exactly or nearabouts the cancer rate within our county, which is significantly higher than the state of California. And another reason why we're 58 out of 58 counties in the state of California are health ranking at dead last. So I'm looking forward to seeing the ordinance when it's prepared, so we can take action on it. Thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions from staff, from council? Okay. I have nothing to add to that. I'd
like to make a motion to adopt the extension of the moratorium, ordinance number 232-2019.
Up, there you go.
It only requires the one passage and, like Melissa said, 4/5 vote, but you still do need a motion waiving the reading of the ordinance in its entirety and just reading it by title only. So you can either do that as a separate motion or all in the same.
Would you like to revise your motion?
Sure. Like to waive the second reading and read by title only and adopt the extension of the moratorium. Ordinance number 232-2019, report of the City Council of the City of Clearlake and interim emergency ordinance number 210-2018, imposing a moratorium on the establishment of tobacco retailing businesses, smoke shops, or hookah or vapor lounges.
Second.
Motion has been made by Councilmember Harris and seconded by Councilmember Purdock. Do we need a roll call, or are
Yes,
we?
please.
We do? Okay.
Councilmember Overton?
Aye.
Councilmember Slutin?
Aye.
Councilmember Harris? Excuse me, I'm sorry. I demoted
fine.
you, I apologize.
No problem.
Councilmember Purdock?
Aye.
And Vice Mayor Slutin?
Aye.
And Mayor Kramer?
Aye.
But just for a short time. She just demoted you.
That's okay. I'm not.
Okay. The motion passes by a 5/5 unanimous vote. Okay. Moving on, city manager and council member reports. City manager Laura?
Yes, a few updates. So Public Works crews have primarily completed the phase 1 of their grading project in the avenues, primarily 19th Avenue through 30th and most of the north-south streets. There's still a few sections that needed too much reconstruction work and additional drainage that they bypassed those at this time and are going to come back and address those. The Meadowbrook project will be starting next week. You may have seen that their crews have been using the new crack sealing equipment on Lakeshore Drive this week, and they will be moving down Olympic when Lakeshore is complete. And then after that time, the grading crew is going to start on the sort of phase 2 area, which is out in the sort of Gobi Desert, Burns Valley area of the city. Our construction manager, Gene Harris, is going to be resigning in the next week or so. He has decided that he wants to spend more time with his family. So fortunately, Adeline Brown has been soaking up information from him, and she's been working with him particularly over this summer with a lot of projects, and is going to be taking over most of those responsibilities. We are going to be bringing Rich Gordon back as inspector who had been helping us earlier this year, and we expect to make sure all the projects in the queue get completed as designed. There has been some initial demolition on the former Burger Time property this week. It's been pretty minimal at this point, but my understanding, the excavator is supposed to be arriving sometime over the weekend, and they'll be using that starting on Monday, so hopefully that's the case. Quick update on Austin Park. You may have noticed that there's been less irrigation over the last week in the park and the ball fields. Through a previous agreement, the water pump that irrigates the park and Haverty Field is owned by school district, and the city has been performing maintenance on that. The school district shut the pump down last week, and so city crews are working on identifying the problems with that and getting it back up and running. We have, tomorrow we will be receiving all of the Austin Park plans, and that should be ready for bid with the exception of the irrigation plans, which required additional work. We'll be getting the draft set of those tomorrow, and then they'll be providing comments back to the designer, and we expect a full set of plans on the 15th, next Friday, which then we'll prepare to go out to bid. So we got a lot more communication, a lot more responsiveness from the designer at this point, so that seems to be positive. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Mr. Burdock.
Well, I have to think. Just really quick, had a meeting with a store owner. Also had other comments from another store owner who have shopping carts. Their concern was that the shopping carts that are found off of their property have been picked up, they believe, by code enforcement. They're asking if they could just be notified of the location of the carts, and they would like to send personnel out to recover those carts, which I think would alleviate some of the efforts of our city staff and allow them to do other things. And it also would allow the city or the store owners not to have to go through the ordinance and maybe pay a fine and do that kind of thing. Anyway, they're trying to get out and collect those carts. There was also an ask if we were to see people pushing the carts off the property, that we could just notify them per the ordinance that they need to leave those carts as their personal property. I think one of the estimates was each cart is worth about $200, so there's a good property value associated with that, and is technically a theft, so I'm sure Chief's up to speed on that. Other than that, thank you very much.
Councilmember Harris.
Well, I actually took off right after our last meeting and left the state for our vacation, and I just returned in time for this council meeting, so I have been out of state for a couple weeks, excuse me, so I don't have a lot to report. I do want to let the gentleman in the audience know, though, that the owner of that business has been notified and he's taking action. So.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Overton.
Beat me to it, huh? Only thing I have to report is tomorrow I will be going to the League of Cities Division meeting that's in Point Arena. I'm going to try to make it over there to their legislation meeting so that I can see what they're going to be putting up for us to decide whether we'll vote, and I'll bring that information back to the next meeting to give you guys an option. I think I'll probably have to have it on the agenda, I think, to what we're going to want to vote for when we go to our conference. So I'll be bringing that information back. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Slotin.
A couple of things. I attended Shakespeare in the Park last Sunday. I'm so glad to see those kind of things here, and attendance was, as far as I've heard, about the same as Lakeport. So, and I think the way it was explained, the audience was sitting in the shade, and the actors didn't have to perform with the sun in their faces. So, great thing. I also attended National Night Out Tuesday, and I want to thank the city staff for the sympathy card when I couldn't be here the last meeting since my mom passed away in the Netherlands. So thank you for that from staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Slotin. I also attended last Sunday night and was waited on by this bearded guy that I thought he had a great beard, and I was kind of hoping maybe I'd see it this week, but that he shaved it off. Mr. Flora. I did have two meetings. I had a Lake Links meeting on Tuesday. Lake Links, as you may all know, is a 501c3 that was formed at the direction of our APC and LTA board committees. To help manage our senior and senior transportation needs in the county. We've rented office space here in Clearlake, and the mobility manager, Carl Parker, is on board, moved over from the LTA staff. And we hope to be developing programs going forward that will provide more and better senior transportation needs. I know that we're talking to Adventist Health for one. I think Mr. Purdock has had some conversations with our director as well. I went to an APC LTA meeting yesterday. Mr. Leonard and I actually were both there. It was a little bit shorter meeting. We got some updates on the road projects from Caltrans, the turnabouts on Highway 20 and 53, and progress on others. The one down in Hidden Valley is, I think, just about done, almost and striped and everything, and they feel like they're making pretty good progress on the one on 20 and 53. And we also talked about, they also discussed the Highway 29, the four segments of the expressway that'll be between Lower Lake and Kelseyville. One segment of it, one of the four is funded, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Chuck, is funded and will start construction next spring. The other three they're still looking for funding on. That bothers me a little bit, but that's what was reported to us. There was something else that I've lost it. Chuck, do you have anything to add to that meeting? Yeah. So, at any rate, those were the meetings that I attended. As I said, it was a little bit shorter. So that's all I have. We have a do-over.
I'm remiss.
You're remiss.
I'm remiss. I sit on the board for the Clear Lake Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank the Vice Mayor for doing my job. Shakespeare on the Lake was a chamber-sponsored event. The Soapbox Derby is also a chamber-sponsored event. Just really like to implore those who are in the audience, those watching TV, business owners or private citizens, get involved with your chamber. They're wanting to do some good things. They want to bring life back to our business district, and that's why we're trying to do these events. Obviously, when they're well attended, that's a good sign. So thank you, the Vice Mayor, for pointing that out. It was really great to see everyone at the park on Sunday when I worked and volunteered. And I also want to thank the other volunteers who pulled that off, as well as all the thespian troops that was out there putting that show on. They did a great job. So thank you very much, and I apologize for having to go back because I forgot.
It's all right. I'm going to have a do-over, too. I remembered what it was. Caltrans also has a Highway 53 corridor study, which hopefully will be done here in the not-too-distant future, which will hopefully give some direction on what they plan for it, and I think we have some input in that as well, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Flora. Yeah, because it really affects what we want to do on a number of our projects. So, that's all I have. Anyone else? Chief White, or you all talked out, or do you have anything more? Okay, thank you, everyone. Future agenda items, any future agenda items anybody wants to bring up?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. All right, seeing none, we are going to adjourn to closed session at...
I would actually, Mr. Mayor, I think we can withdraw both closed session items for this meeting.
Even better. So at 7:11, this has got to be close to a record.
It's not even close.
Ah, come on.
Minute 45 seconds. Beat that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I thought we had it one time with the planning commission, but that was
All right, any rate, 11, now it's 7:12. We're adjourning. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
He closed the meeting, but Doug kept on talking.
He kept talking.